Dan, thank you for joining me. Let me start that over. Daniel, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I got to check out your movie and I have some thoughts. So, let's start with tell us a little bit about Succubus and where it you're inspired by it.
Yeah, I mean, Succubus came to me, it was like several years ago that I first had the kernel of the idea. And I was, out of a long-term relationship and for the first time ever on like dating apps. And, probably better now, but back then it was like there were a lot of bots and a lot of like people like phishing scams and weird things like that. And so there was kind of this sense where you didn't fully know who you were talking to or what was like happening in that world. And it was just kind of a weird, creepy vibe. And it just gave me an idea about wanting to do something that kind of had that feeling, like the experience of what that was like, and then kind of thinking of how far could you take that, and what directions could you take that, and that was really the initial kernel of it, and just more and more stuff kind of grew around it after that.
So the reason I ask is because I found this movie all too relatable. Being myself, having gone through divorce, so my daughter was young. Trying to find a place, trying to figure yourself out, thinking that you had everything going. And Brendan did a heck of a job at really making me very uncomfortable through the whole thing because I felt like that was me to a certain extent. I wasn't falling for a demon, but his just kind of his almost being lost, and there's this kind of small hope, with the ex, and there's a child. And so for me, watching him go through this, Chris, was terrifying.
Yes, I get that. I mean, there were definitely times in when we'd be editing when I'd be like, oh, the scene is just so long. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel this, makes me feel that. And there were a couple of times my editor would go like, well, that's because like this is sort of too real. Like you have to stop. Like stop. Don't cut it out because it feels too real. Like you're having your own uncomfortable experience, and that is could be good. And it's like, okay, right. That's like you have to remember that perspective when things kind of filter through life. Sometimes they sort of get masked enough to where you sort of like forget what the initial seed of it was or thread of it was. And then when it comes back out through an actor, it can kind of be like, wait, this makes you uncomfortable. Why am I feeling this? What's wrong? And then you realize, oh, nothing's wrong. That's maybe how it's supposed to be and how you're supposed to feel. Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate the film very much because I could almost recommend this as, you want to know what it felt like? I need you to watch this horror film. That's
That's
exactly what it
awesome.
felt like.
Yeah. I mean, it's terrible, but it's awesome.
Right, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's really hard to explain. Tell me about your filming, the choice of shots, because I thought it was really clever the way you guys really used computer screens, phones, apps, in the sense that it's very relatable, especially nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, that was something early on that we really wanted was create this sort of sense of like, there's the real world and there's the online world, right? And how we're sort of more and more getting really sucked into the online world where it's kind of overtaking what feels like maybe like reality at times. And the idea there was like, what does it feel like to kind of be always living in this world, this virtual world of just kind of text and everything's 2D, and then leaving that and going back into the real world. And if you encounter something that maybe is a little sinister, or I guess very sinister in this online world, what's the real world feel like when you leave and take that with you? And kind of like, what's the sort of, regular life feels kind of, especially for Chris and what he's going through, very kind of dark and lonely and isolated compared to this sort of like rapid fire. There's always text going on, coming back and forth, and you can talk to someone here, you can move over there, and kind of distract yourself from this emptiness that's out there in the real world sometimes. Now that everyone's kind of living in our little box of the internet and our screens.
Yeah, it makes it very relatable. One thing I really liked was obviously a demon was never going to come at you full force frontal. They're always going to try to lure you in to make sure that you do what they want. I thought the way that you handled Adra's kind of flirtiness, and it kind of goes more and more from even from like the not really talking to the eyes, and then just a little bit of voice. And I mean, it was very seductive in a way, and it's like, and it was terrifying because as an audience, you know that you know what she is, obviously, but just to see how he's being played, it's like, oh man, that could really work. Tell me as a filmmaker how you decided that pacing and the process and the sequence of scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of go back to having some of these sort of initial experience where you meet someone on a dating app or something and you're texting and sometimes things get weird. Like, I had this girl tell me a story about being like abducted one time, and just like it was this crazy story. And then at the end, you're like, was any of that real? Or was that like a game? Or is that just something crazy that actually happened to her? Things like that, where you're having that feeling of like the text coming in, and there's something really strange and intriguing, and you can feel all this other stuff around it, all this kind of like, maybe it's mystery, or maybe it's something a little bit unsettling, or just something else around it, and we wanted to create that. And then it's someone you can see but can't hear, and kind of more and more of like getting drawn into. And the way I thought about it too with this movie was, it's kind of she kind of grows and becomes more concrete, and to the point of being physical, as she kind of sucks him deeper and deeper in. And so there's sort of a balance there that's happening, whereas he becomes more sucking the screen, she has more that she can use to leverage against him. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was done very, very well. So with that said, tell me about working with Rachel Cook and kind of the direction you're able to give you what she brought to the role.
Yeah, I mean, so Rachel brought so much to the role. I mean, she like, one, she very much kind of, when we first met with her, she actually came late in the process, and we were all like getting really quickly to ready to shoot. We had to find somebody new actually for this role. And so that's a very terrifying prospect. But Rachel kind of had this, like, we did a Zoom with her, and we would do we kind of did some improv and things like that. And every actor brings their own something to a project. And I think what you want to do, or what I want to do, is, what does someone sort of naturally have in them, and how do you make that or find that as a strength, and like reinforce that, and kind of help that grow as a strength for the movie. And what Rachel really had was, she had this ability to be very kind of aloof, and then also very present, like very. And that's really what the character is. And so when she really kind of focuses on you, and for her, literally, she's working with the camera, like, all the stuff that's not shot cinematically, if it is shot through the phone, she's working with the phone, and so she's engaging with it, and she's kind of choosing her framing and stuff like that. And what she really brought was, she really just could kind of take something that was started off innocuous, and just sort of really quickly turn it into like just this like bam focus, amazingly framed, and then she's connected. And that was like a really powerful thing that is key to this character, especially since we're waiting for the moment when she's going to really lock in on him and kind of hypnotize him in a way, and then hopefully the viewer too.
Yeah, and then also with Brendan Bradley, a lot of his performances are very, very subtle eye twitches, very breaths. They're him sitting there reflecting or trying to make a decision, almost very anxiously. Tell me about working with him and kind of getting those scenes done, because you give them enough time to breathe, number one, and then you're very um secure that the audiences are going to be able to pick up on some of those subtleties.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad. Like I'm really glad that that came through and worked for you. So I appreciate that. And Brendan was someone cast really early in the process, and it makes sense. He's the lead, and he had to. I worked with him the first time like 14 years ago. We did a Subway web series like for the restaurants together. That was like a time travel comedy, and I remember how funny Brendan was, but then in that he had to, for comic effect, be really emotional. And it was like, wow, this guy really is like I kind of thought him as a comedian, almost like sketch comedy or something. But like this guy's a really good actor. And then when we were bringing the script to people, some people would get the script and relate to script, and other people were like, "Oh, I just couldn't get into the script. The script, I couldn't get into the script because Chris is such a scumbag." And I think, okay, he's not a scumbag. He makes some poor choices, but I think like he has like a good heart underneath, and we can understand, where he's coming from. And I just knew from knowing Brendan that nobody would just go, "Oh, this guy's a piece of shit," from seeing him. Like they would feel the empathy that, and feel where he's coming from. And I thought that was really important to make it not just like look at this dumb guy get seduced by a succubus, to sort of understand and relate to him and see, that he's a person going through his own stuff at that moment. And he had to really those scenes where he's like on the computer. I mean, he really had to work. He was there the first one there. Derek was there who played Eddie. So and Olivia who played Sharon was there. So when they had scenes, he could play off of them. But initially, in playing off Rachel and playing off Ron, he really had to work with our assistant director, or like our costume designer would read roles, and he just had to really just bring it, and he brought it and lived it. And those were hard days where you're just jumping around and you're like, okay, we're in this angle now. Let's go back to that scene with Ron. Let's go back to this part where this happens. And yeah, he just had to be so prepared and just empty himself out. And honestly, I didn't know that I didn't know that he was as good as he is, even though I thought that he was great and wanted to trust him, with my movie. But yeah, I'm glad that you felt that from him.
Yeah, not at all. I did not feel that he was a scumbag at all. I like I said, I think I related with him a lot, and a lot of the things that I can tell he was emoting and feeling. So I had a lot of empathy for him. And I think that's what made it scarier, because I understood the path he was taking, besides the
Totally.
fact that it was a demon.
Yes. I
So,
will say one thing from the script. We did make the separation with the wife a little bit more. We leaned it to feeling more like they're probably going to separate. You know what I mean? Or it's
mhm.
going that way. Which I think also helped a little bit. Then like maybe we will, maybe we won't. Oh, here's the succubus online. That helped too. Yeah, it made them more relatable, I think, and more.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did, because I had that issue too, where there was a short time period where um I had that like small bit of hope, but I also knew that she didn't.
Right.
And so it was very, very weird. Uh to see it was great. Um so yeah, I was very surprised by the film overall. So thank you for that. And
Cool.
Thank you, Daniel, for spending a few minutes with me. I appreciate it. I will be recommending this film to everyone, just because it was very well done, and very very relatable, very modern, and I just think you hit all the notes. Very surprised. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's what we wanted, and you never know what all's going to come through in the movie, if all the layers will come through, or all the things. And so it's always really nice to hear like when they actually do, because everyone has their own experience and brings their own experiences to a movie, and so when it kind of clicks in with the people that you think, oh, but maybe these are the people that would really respond to it, or someone who went through this might really respond to it. It's great.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. As soon as I was watching it, I was like, I think the director had some previous experiences here, because these are very, very real scenes here. Daniel, again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Happy Friday the 13th since we're here. Thank you for getting the memo about the black shirts, and we hope to talk to you again on the next one.
Of course. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.